Well, hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Wellness by Design today. I'm Jane Hogan, the wellness engineer. Today we are talking about adrenals, facts and myths, and I'm really excited to have a guest here who knows all about adrenals, going to share some great information with us, and that is Reed Davis. Welcome, Reed.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Jane.
I'm going to tell everyone a little bit about you. Reed Davis, board certified holistic health practitioner and certified nutritional therapist, is an expert in functional lab testing and holistic lifestyle medicine. He's the founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, FDN, and the FDN Certification Course with over 4,000 graduates in 50 countries. Reed has served as the health director at a wellness center in Southern California for over 10 years, and with over 10,000 clients is known as one of the most experienced clinicians in his field. Pretty amazing, Reed.
Thank you.
I'm really honored to have you on the show today, and love the work that you're doing, certifying practitioners to help people get answers on their health. On the holistic side, a lot of us come to this field because we found that the other way wasn't necessarily helping us. Did you have a story like that yourself?
Yeah, it's funny you call it the other way. Yeah, the other way. So, yeah, I do. I started working in a clinic in 1999 when I wanted to change careers. So I went from environmental law and saving the planet
Hmm.
to people. I wanted to work with people, including myself. I didn't have any health problems, but I also didn't want anything sneaking up on me as I got older. So I said, well, I'm going to save people instead of the planet. And it's all just doing good in the world and trying to be of service. That's where I come from. But yeah, everybody walking in the office, I found out, had already been to 6 or 8 or 10 practitioners the other way, and they were looking for something alternative, sometimes desperately searching for answers that they weren't getting the other way. And so, I really didn't have any medical training or anything. I ended up getting a lot of certifications in health related activities, modalities, and such. But at the time, I didn't know very much. I had a lot to learn,
Uh-huh.
but I think you like this. I had nothing to unlearn. In other words, I was kind of like starting off, I'm going to help people. Now, what do I need to do?
Right.
Because again, people are coming in with that situation you talked about. The other way wasn't there. I say their ladder was up against the wrong wall,
Mm.
and they needed to figure out where to put that ladder and how to start climbing up. And that's what I've taught people ever since, over 20 years, of course. Um, but I earned my current station in life. I'm a teacher now, but I spent 10 years in that office really sweating it out, learning to run the lab work, the alternative lab work that really got to the root of a lot of people's problems. So that's how I created my training program based on that 10 years, 10,000 clients. And I can teach people what I learned in those 10 years in about 10 months. It's a very robust program that I teach now, but I'm not trying to sell the course. I'm just saying that yeah, I'm sitting in a spot where I've made a lot of observations of my own, on top of all the great mentorship and training I had over all those years.
Hmm. Yeah, I think, when people have a chronic condition that's not it's not getting resolved, or they're told it can't be resolved. It's the case that I had, with rheumatoid arthritis. It's like, well, it's too bad. There's not really any solution. You're going to keep getting worse. It's not really a solution that I wanted to take. And people get in that situation. They just think, well, what are the other answers for me? And it's really interesting what you said there about not having to unlearn. And I think that was kind of with me as well. Like, an engineering background was so different that I didn't really have to unlearn anything, and I was sort of open to whatever. So thanks for just pointing out that that was actually an advantage, because our beliefs are super powerful when it comes to, well, when it comes to everything really, but especially with our health. Uh,
Sure.
yeah, that what we believe and what we've been told and what we think is possible. um, it's really that really affects physically what manifests. So we're going to talk today. I know you got a big, a lot of topics you could talk on, but I know we decided on adrenals because, well, I haven't had anyone specifically talking about adrenals before, and we sort of hear this a lot, like when people kind of have these mystery symptoms, they don't really know what's going on, and maybe they've gone to see someone and they've been told they've got adrenal fatigue, and like, what is that anyway? Is that like a real diagnosis? What is it? Let's just talk about the adrenals, what they do first, and then maybe we can get into adrenal fatigue, what that means.
Yeah, sure. So um, I knew we were going to talk about this, and my staff puts out, here's all the things Reed could talk about, and pick one. The truth is, you can't separate any one organ or system or even one cell from another cell. They're all part of the whole being, and it's
So true.
really interesting how that works. And the problem with modern medicine, as you know, Jane, is that it fractionates. It reduces people down to their parts, and
Mm.
one part, one problem, one fix. And so that's what's wrong with Western medicine. The other way. I love your saying on that. And so with that in mind, yes, the adrenals play a part in our overall health and wellness because they're considered our stress glands. They help us respond to stressful situations. And by the way, that word stress could come from anything. It could come from mental, emotional stress is probably what you think of the most. Your job, your relationships, your finances, the news. God forbid you even watch that anymore. Who wants to do that, right?
Right.
So your adrenals help you respond. They help you adapt. They help you survive. They're survival glands. They're two little glands that sit on top of your kidneys. So that's why they call them adrenal. So your renal gland is your kidney, and it's on top of that. In Latin, that's adrenal. So adrenal. So they're sitting there, and they're just getting messages mostly from a couple of organs up in your brain and through the blood and through the nervous system. They get messages, stress. And wow, what do I do? And they produce chemicals, hormones, and things that go out into your body and help you respond and adapt to that stress. And it doesn't seem to matter. This is very interesting. I think that whether it's that mental, emotional stress from your job, your finances, your relationships, whatever, traffic, trying to get to work on time, that's a form of stress. The adrenal glands are going to go, well, here's some adrenaline and here's some cortisol to get you through. And those have their own effects. Now, if it's just one time, you could stand a little bit of extra cortisol and adrenaline, and it actually, again, would help you. It's part of the fight flight mechanism.
Yeah.
So you get out of a jam. No, it's also the same response. The body doesn't know the difference between that mental, emotional stress, like getting cut off in traffic, or physical aches and pains. Like me personally, I've had a lot of injuries from having a very well used body. Motorcycle accidents, sports injuries, and so on and so on. Even this winter, I had a little spill, and stuff happens here. So you get aches and pains. Well, those are stressful too. It's just another type of stress where the adrenal glands are getting taxed to come in and support. Now, we're not done yet. There's other types of stress too. We mentioned mental, emotional. We mentioned the physical aches, pains, trauma to the body, getting punched in the face, and having someone cut you off in traffic. The adrenals are there to support and stimulate and help you survive. Fight, flight. Now, the same is true with the chemical assaults. Now,
Hmm.
these are very ubiquitous for one thing, but also insidious. They're hard to identify, and you may not even know that your new carpeting is outgassing your new draperies or new um, clothing. And getting on an airplane where there's diesel fumes and all kinds of fire retardants. There's just chemicals everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you remember where I started, it was in environmental law
Mm.
with studying the environment. So I knew how bad it was. And then I started learning all the anatomy and physiology of it as I got into working with people. So it's really quite a full circle of how I see stress, chemical and biochemical. Your body makes its own chemicals and toxins and things it should be excreting, but all of this adds up. So you got mental, emotional, physical trauma, aches and pains. You got chemical, biochemical stressors. Really have kind of a stressful environment. And instead of just being a one-time thing where, hey, you get cut off in traffic, cortisol and adrenaline go up and they help you survive. What it will do is raise your blood pressure, raise your blood sugar, it dilates your eyes, so you can see better. It's survival. The problem with multiple stressors and the chronicity of these multiple stressors that we have is the adrenals just keep getting taxed and taxed and taxed and demanded and demanded and demanded, things like that. Now, at some point, they do become less responsive. And
Mhm.
so it levels of cortisol, for instance, the main stress hormone, will go down. And so they called that adrenal fatigue. And because when you can't respond like you used to, you feel like crap. That's a medical term I learned. You feel like crap, and that could be tired and fatigued and gaining weight and foggy thinking and the aches and pains are often there. And then there's a cascade. And so I can go into the cascade in just a minute, but I'll tell you that there's no real diagnosis, medical diagnosis for adrenal fatigue.
Yeah,
They're
that's what
really
I've heard.
just responding appropriately to stress until these feedback mechanisms and sensitivity within the cells and things like that change from just being beat up. But there's no real such thing as adrenal fatigue unless you have true medical hypoadrenism, which is usually an autoimmune condition of some sort. So put that aside. Um, the adrenals just and the rest of your body, by the way, through this cascade, this downward spiral that begins with stress,
Yep.
you get dysfunctional. You get all kinds of underlying imbalances and things. And I could name a few of them quickly here for you. But
Yeah, let's do that.
well, so when you're in this quote unquote adrenal fatigue, it's because you've been under stress for a long time. Your body's going, hey, can you please give me a break?
Mm.
But it won't, you unless you change your life, unless you quit your job, get divorced, hit the lottery, all these
Or,
miraculous
or
aligning of the planets,
or learn to deal with the stress better, and if you can't change a
or
situation. Yeah.
well, which is the real solution, of course. So I'm saying it isn't going to be by accident that
Right.
goes away.
Right.
That's kind
So,
of so now when you're in this state of fight flight, your body it gets kind of catabolic versus anabolic. So catabolic is the growth and development and continuous replacement of old cells with nice new ones. And so you're anabolic. You notice kids are very anabolic up until your late teens, even. You're very anabolic. You're just growing.
mhm.
You're growing, developing. You can adapt to almost anything when you're younger. Kids bounce, we always used to say.
Mhm.
I know mine did. Um, but then you get more catabolic when you get that stressed out and your adrenal glands are not responding the same way they used to. You get more into a catabolic means your body's breaking down. Aging is one of the familiar sort of symptoms, and you can't change aging either. But you can, as you were alluding to, certainly mitigate. There's all kinds of ways to slow this down and to handle it. But typically, what happens, and I'm hoping some of your listeners will identify with this, you start out with stress and chronic stress and fight flight, and you go from being anabolic or the ability to handle that, you're adaptive, to not so adaptive. Your body starts paying the piper for all that stress, and some of it you may not even know about. And that's unfortunate. But when you're in that catabolic state, you'll notice that your sex hormones will also get unbalanced.
Mhm.
The estrogen to progesterone. This affects women's cycles. They're going through menopause a lot earlier these days. It's just a stress based. sort of early menopause, and women are even ceasing to menstruate much earlier. It's stress. And there's no magic lotion, potion, powder, or pill that can really fix it. There's some symptom relieving things we can do, but you're basically breaking down. So the hormones go out of balance. Periods get irregular. Sex drive goes down. Ability to build muscle goes down. Energy goes down. Lots of things change when you're under a lot of stress and your body's breaking down. It's catabolic. You're actually aging more quickly.
Yeah,
Now, that doesn't sound very much fun at all.
it certainly doesn't.
But not to go too deep, but it gets worse from there, because the next thing to happen is your immune system gets off. You start being more susceptible to diseases and disease processes. There's you've heard that the gut is most of your immune system. Well, with high cortisol, catabolic condition, the main immuno chemical, if you will, in the gut goes down. The secretory IgA level disappears, not completely, but it will go down. Now, guess what? Bacteria and parasites and overgrowth, fungal, all kinds of things become, it's easier in this new environment for them to thrive because your SIG-A is down, your immune system's down. So not only are you in catabolic, you're not able to handle stress the same way you used to, but your sex hormones are off. That's got its set of symptoms. Now your immune system is down. That's got its own set of symptoms, because as your good and bad bacteria get out of balance with low SIG-A, low immune, the bad bacteria can start to overgrow.
Yeah,
Now you're going to have digestive symptoms. So
yeah,
you've got your stress related symptoms, your sex hormone related symptoms, your immune related symptoms, your digestive related symptoms, and it can get worse from there. You can end up with what we call leaky gut, and then you've got a congested liver. Now you've got detoxification issues. You're not detoxifying properly, and that bleeds over into all the other detoxifying organs. And I can keep this going. So
yeah.
you, but so we ended up with now, stress related, catabolic, body breaking down, aging faster than you want to, showing up. By the way, I run all the labs for this. I have all the markers. I can show you how to connect all the dots between the stress hormones, the sex hormones, the immune markers, the digestive markers, and the detoxification, like liver markers, which again bleeds over into other detoxifying organs, the kidneys, the skin, the colon, the lymph, and even your lungs are exchanging. They're detoxifying your body
Right.
every breath with letting out the carbon dioxide and bringing in oxygen. And so that's how the body breaks down, and why we don't just say, oh, you've got adrenal fatigue. If we just labeled it adrenal fatigue, where would you be? You'd be
Yeah.
probably just pounding down a lot of supplements. Oh, I got to help my poor adrenals. No, there's a lot more work to be done
Yeah.
sometimes,
I,
and you want to sort it out.
I feel like you're talking my story there, because it was exactly what happened to me. Like, because my symptoms came on so quickly and I'd had this super stressful year, I knew that it had to be connected. So I was like, okay, there's this connection. And I like immediately went into menopause. I got this horrible joint pain, later diagnosis rheumatoid arthritis, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, chemical sensitivities. I mean, all of it was happening. And I probably some people that are listening can relate as well. But I kept on going. It started with stress. It started with stress. So if it started with stress, I should be able to go back. I mean, it took years. Like, it's not a quick fix, right? But I
No.
had to kind of start peeling back these layers and dealing. Well, the first thing I had to deal with was that SIBO. Actually, was get that under control, because as long as I had that, I couldn't get the gut healed, and so prioritizing sleep and doing all these other things. So I know you would do the testing. Do you have like a generalized approach that you use for people when they have, I mean, I know it's not a real
Yes.
diagnosis, but when they're showing this cascade of things happening, what's your first line of defense, or your first line of attack?
It's the first thing conceptually would be to understand a phrase I came up with: metabolic chaos. So
Mm.
what I just described to you, and the sort of vicious cycle of stress related gut conditions or detoxification conditions or whatever, the sexual, you name it. So stress is ubiquitous and it's hard to recognize sometimes, but the effects of it are obvious when you run the labs. So you mentioned running the labs, and we will test the hormones, the immune system, digestion, detoxification, and energy production, and the nervous system balance. That's the sympathetic with the Now, that's an acronym that spells hidden, HIDDEN. So
Ah,
it's very easy to
convenient.
remember. So hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system. That didn't come to me overnight. That came through working in an office for 10 years, seeing thousands of people and running labs. I was free to run labs, and I ran labs, thousands and thousands of labs. I had good mentorship, and I talked to the lab scientists a lot, but it was face to face with Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones on their personal problems and how this data explained exactly what they were going through. So rather than one measurement running I mean, people came in, again, they were searching. We weren't the first stop, but I was determined to be the last stop.
Haha.
And, and so they'd already had their blood work done and were told nothing's wrong with you. It all looks normal. And you've had that and see this. Well, we ran the other labs. The other way doesn't do for the most part, or doesn't do it the same way we do also. And so we do look at a constellation of healing opportunities in each person. To get to your question, you really need to understand this idea that there's in a in chronic conditions, there's always multiple causal factors,
Right. So true.
always. So when people say I get to the root cause, well, they're generally going to attribute one root cause or two root cause, but there's often multiple. Matter of fact, there's always multiple. And here's the other thing that hardly anyone talks about or considers: those causal factors and influences on a person's every cell, they're all having an effect upon each other too.
Mm.
As I just kind of illustrated, your stress is related to your hormone problems, but that's related to your immune system problems. That's related to your digestive problems and your detoxification and your energy production, and nervous system balance also comes into it. So the HIDDN, you better be looking at all of it. And
Right.
it's not a medical diagnosis. It's a here's what's wrong assessment. Now, those, again, I call them healing opportunities. So our
Hmm.
labs help us sort out that it's just metabolic chaos. It's not just adrenal fatigue or indigestion, heartburn, bloating, gas. You've got SIBO, you've got all the other sort of diagnoses. And we recognize these things, but don't play that game, because we can outperform anything related to standard medicine. Even functional medicine today is still too fractionating or reductive. It reduces down to, you still have your even in functional medicine, guys who say, well, I'm an endocrinologist or a gastroenterologist or I'm a proctologist, whatever the heck they are. And so they still are kind of breaking it down. We don't, by discipline, by virtue of the system that I created in the office, we look at every cell, tissue, organ, and system, the entire organism, with equal enthusiasm and interest and desire to say what can be improved in every area. And the protocol, which you're kind of asking me about, this is where the question started. What do you do about it? You find all these things. What do you do about it? Well, you don't treat one thing at a time.
Hmm.
You don't say I've got adrenal fatigue, I've got SIBO even, because that's just the result of the real problem. It's a
Exactly.
diagnosis and it's a set of symptoms, but that paperwork and I've looked at hundreds of SIBO test results, um, and and the symptoms themselves, the heartburn, gas, indigestion, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, alternating, whatever, those aren't so that what's on the paper and the symptoms are not the problem. They're the result of the metabolic chaos that exists across multiple systems, cells, organs, and so on. So
Hmm.
if you don't start there, you're gonna get lucky if you pick the right thing, guess on what it is. Matter of fact, most even functional medicine practitioners are guessing at which lab to run, because they don't want to run the whole gamut. They're not trained that way. They're trained to and so they use what I call the sounds like method, Jane. The sounds like SIBO, sounds like thyroid, sounds like whatever. So they run that test, and God forbid they find the low thyroid because they pat themselves on the back. I found your problem. It's low thyroid. And that'll fix, as if that would fix you up. So
Hmm.
I could tell you that 25 or 30 million women with low thyroid, just because they're taking thyroid doesn't mean they're happy and all better. Everything's fine and equal. Matter of fact, never is that the case. There's always something else. So it's the whole sounds like point and reductionistic point of view that's wrong. So you have to never do that.
Hmm.
Always be very disciplined in your desire to help people, to really investigate the entire constellation of healing opportunities as much as we have labs for, and then apply the general principles of health building. Now I'm actually answering your question. The general principles of health building, but you apply them to every cell, tissue, organ, system, the entire organism simultaneously. And this took 10 years in the office to sweat this out that, hey, that's the only way. And that requires behavior. That requires, and answer your question, yes, you can live yourself out of whatever you lived yourself into. You pretty
Hmm.
much abused yourself and weren't self-aware enough to and sometimes some of this help wasn't available. Um, but now it is. Now we know to be holistic, to take a holistic approach. It's
Hmm.
you know and that's where the D.R.E.S.S acronym comes in, the dress for health success. Um, that stands for diet, eating right for you, rest, including resting your spirit and your emotions and your digestive system, rest every cell and system in your body. Diet, rest, E is exercise. Obviously, you can't get better if you don't move your body around. Diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction,
Yep.
which, oh my God, we've already talked a lot about that. There's the mental, emotional, the physical, and the chemical. And then finally, supplementation, D.R.E.S.S, diet,
Hmm.
rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. I don't have my own brand of supplements. I don't, but I know a lot about them. And they are very useful, very helpful.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. You're right. We use a holistic repair program. We don't diagnose or treat anything specifically.
Hmm. I love the way you call it healing opportunities, but it makes so much sense. I mean, a lot of people, even now, I think it's probably just because of the culture that we're in. It's like, okay, take a pill, fix it. And they're like, well, I don't want to take, a pharmaceutical. What supplement can I take? And they think just doing the supplement is going to do the job. But really, I mean, it's such a, there's so much to us and there's so much affecting us that we really do need to look at all those factors. I love that acronym D.R.E.S.S to look at really the gamut of things that we can do. And the stress that's huge, right? Like when I
Oh,
hosted the summit, becoming pain free in the summer, and I interviewed like 50 experts, and it
wow.
seemed to me that everything came down to stress and toxins, really. And you could even say that toxins, as they are a form of stress, really. So,
Oh, yeah.
stress is huge, and so many different types of stress. And some of it just people aren't even aware of, the fact that they're putting their food in plastic and, heating it up in the microwave, what that might be doing to them over a period of time, right? You keeps building, or the chemicals that,
Yeah.
are in the food, or so many things. So there's a lot
It's
of
ingrained.
awareness that needs to happen.
it does take that, people come to my house and visit and they wonder why we don't have a microwave. We don't have one. I didn't even have a toaster because we don't eat bread. So I didn't have a toast till my mother came to visit, and she's 92 and she wants her toast. So she's gonna have her toast, but yeah, it takes some adjustments. It takes living a little more consciously, but you have to know a thing or two. People just aren't trained, and if all they ever see is what's on TV, they're screwed.
Yeah.
Because you're being there's a lot of, let's just call it, false advertising.
Yeah.
I mean, we won't go to fake news, but we'll just say false advertising, brainwashing, and things that is going on. So we've got to look outside of regular media things and listen to podcasts like this one. Jane, you're doing an amazing job as the wellness engineer, and I love that you came from an engineering background, because that means you're used to data. You're
Yeah.
looking at facts and figures and things, and you can't build the pyramids without a straight line and a square. You know what I mean? You need some basic science to get that done, and that's kind of what we are. We're the real science, the basic science. How does the body really work? So you want to become more aware, and
Hmm.
it's beyond whatever you learned in biology class in seventh grade,
And
unfortunately.
I think thank goodness for the internet and podcasts and things like that. Education is available to people now if they're willing to look into it. I mean, that's kind of how I started. That was when I started listening to podcasts, actually, was when my health declined and I started just trying to find some answers. And wow, there's a thing called podcasts. I kind of heard of it. But
Mhm.
it is amazing the information that's out there. And I think, switching beliefs is what we're talking about here, is that people can believe, and that's why I speak about my story and I try to have lots of people on so that it can inspire people and help them believe that there is another way. It's possible to actually heal the body again when we create the environment that can allow it to heal. So all right, so I know you've got a gift that you wanted to give the audience, so would you like to talk about that?
If you want to talk about it, sure, because I'm here to serve and to answer questions. And I love that you're a seeker. I'll just make a quick comment about belief. Belief in knowing are kind of like two different things. Um, Santa Claus, that's something you believe in or you don't. When you know the facts, you don't have to, so we don't believe in what we do. We get the facts so that we know there's no Santa Claus. And sorry for any kids listening. Um, and that could cause trauma, telling the wrong kid that there's no Santa Claus. Anyway, so yeah, there's no Santa Claus. We have to get the facts. We have to get the data. That's why I became an authority on multiple lab tests, the saliva testing, urine testing, stool testing, and of course, blood work is important. But it's getting even the hair can tell us something about a person,
Mm-hmm.
and that'll give us those healing opportunities. Then we apply the general principles of the health building using the D.R.E.S.S principles, D.R.E.S.S. So yes, there is a manual on the D.R.E.S.S for Health Success program. We'd be happy to give that to anyone who cares to grab it for free. And you can just put the information in the show notes, I think. But if they
Yeah.
go to fdntraining.com/ the name of your podcast, which
Wellness by
is
design.
Wellness
Yep.
by Design, they can get a free copy of that.
Yeah, we'll have the link in the show notes. That is great. Thank you so much. I know that people are going to be going after that because it's such a great way to get some answers. And lots of times people, I mean, I was kind of lucky that I had a diagnosis, but some people are going years and years and years with no diagnosis. They just know they don't feel good and things are getting worse and don't know what to do.
Yeah,
So
you wonder, I have to interrupt you and say,
yeah.
you wonder, did the diagnosis in a lot of cases actually help the person? Or kind of stop, they can stop looking now for answers. Oh, we've got your diagnosis. I don't like
True.
that one bit, because there's a reason why your body went into that downward spiral.
Yeah.
So those, and you got to at least look. You can't go, well, we don't know why you got this RA, so here's your pills.
Yeah.
If you're never looking, you'll be under the control of another person, practitioner or somebody. And that is the real goal of my work, is to put people back in control.
Yes.
And
Yes.
never was that so apparent as in the last few years here. The last couple of years have been just rampant, other people wanting control.
Yeah.
No, you got to be in good. But that didn't occur to me recently. That occurred to me in 1999, over 23 or 4 years ago. That you know why would you leave control of your health in someone else's hand? That's what I said to my first clients ever. Why are you putting control of your health in someone else's hands? Let's investigate. Let's find out why you've got this stuff going on. Then you can be in control. And eventually the D.R.E.S.S program came up as
Hmm.
something you could apply.
I
I'm
love
not the
that.
one fixing you. You're going to fix yourself.
Yes. And that's what this podcast is about. Really, it's about empowering the person to be the CEO of their own health. So I'm going to ask you one last question, and that is, because we're talking about being empowered, being intentional, what is one small step someone could take today that's going to initiate healing in whatever form? What's the one thing they could do?
I have to start with where I start every day, which is being grateful when I get out of bed, or when I'm getting out of bed, or before I get out of bed. If I'm laying there awake, I you can make a habit of this. It doesn't happen, and I'm pretty disciplined. Even me, not every day, but that self-awareness and consciousness, that I need to be in control, makes me start with, today's going to be a great day. I appreciate, starting with my wife who's next to me, my home, my kids, my all this stuff. Be grateful. I even have one of my graduates started his own program. He starts every day with, he calls it vitamin G.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Matter of
Is
fact,
that Benazati?
Ben Azai, I was going to
Yeah,
say
I
he'd
was
be a
gonna
great
say,
guy for
yeah.
your,
He's
yeah,
been on the
vitamin
podcast.
G. Yeah, so it's true. It's
Yeah.
true. You start every day with vitamin G, gratitude. It's going to go probably a little better for you than if you didn't do that. And so I start with uh, that trap, if you will. Again, I know we want to get through the podcast here, but you know, um, there is nothing more important. My job is to uncover obstacles to healing. People come to me with all kinds of stuff, and they come to my practitioners. I've trained thousands of people with obstacles to heal. Something's holding you back. Something's not been discovered. You don't have enough data, or whatever it is. But sometimes those obstacles to healing are in your mind and your emotions.
Yes.
And when they're locked up, when they're hidden there, there's it's really self-awareness and starting with gratitude that uncovers those things. You'll find that, yeah, maybe I've been looking at this the wrong way,
I
and
love
you can
that.
open up your mind and your emotions, your heart to change, and it's very much possible.
I can totally relate to that because when I started, I was like getting the data, like you said, and charting and graphing, and, I'm going to fight that. Like it was that kind of attitude. But it was when I let go and surrendered, actually, and kind of saw, well, what's the gifts in this, and to be grateful, and that it really took me to a next level because I plateau, right? And so it took me to the next level. So I'm really glad that someone that like you that's into doing all the testing, talked about that as well, and the power of our mind and our thoughts.
You,
So thank you so much. Is there anything else that you haven't had the opportunity to say that you'd really like the audience to hear, Reed?
oh, well, just never give up. Try to maintain that control, and get training from smart people like you, Jane.
Well, thank you. And go to you to get some testing done. So, Reed, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. This has been really good and eye-opening for people.
My
So,
pleasure.
thank you for the great work that you're doing in the world, training all these people, giving people these opportunities for healing that are changing their lives and the ripple effect that it's having out. So, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. All
Every
right.
day.
And everyone that's watching, listening, thanks so much for being here. And please share this with someone who needs to hear it. Have a great day.